And so I decided if I needed to understand a classroom, I needed to be a classroom teacher. So I took on being a classroom teacher of what then had a different term, but now we would say moderately cognitively impaired. And I went into the classroom as a teacher. So that gave me a different perspective on what I wanted to do. Then I went back to being the speech pathologist for that program, and then after 6 years in that program, I became the director of speech and hearing in a residential facility in North Carolina. And what I took from those experiences in the other two facilities was that communication and therapy, speech therapy, was not in a therapy room. It's part of the total environment. So what I started, I went in and I set up the whole program there, and each of my speech pathologists had an office and was in the building where the individuals lived, and that communication should be a part of that program. So right from there, it was so exciting for me to see it come to life, that communication was recognized as being something more than the speech therapist will cure it in their little room down the hallway, or we had a pink pill to give them and we were going to make everybody just fine and communicate. Because there's been a lot of those hurdles to go over in these years too, to get people to understand how difficult it is to support and to get good communication with an individual with severe disabilities. So that was my first reward in working with my staff, and actually sometimes having to convince the staff this is really what they wanted to do. Kind of like when I wrote our first database program on how to collect data and information about our individuals we worked with and the services we provided. I happened to be the one to write all that program for the computer system. And back in this was the 80s, I had to take my staff screaming and kicking into using computers, and nowadays, I mean, it's second nature, but I think about it, and I was probably the oldest person on staff, which I think is funny that I knew that technology. But with that came just exciting moments of what we saw go on with getting people to integrate communication into the daily being, and then being able to give them the technology that made sure they could communicate. A couple of real highlights I have to tell you there. We had Symbol Social Club on Thursday nights, and we had different ones. We had Rebus Club, we had Bliss Club, we had just general Symbol Social Club. Well, they all became one after voice output became reasonably priced, because it was very high priced. And I actually had, for one of my individuals, an Autocom that was programmed with Bliss way back in the day, and I'm thinking now, that person probably could have read. I probably did that person a disservice. But I remember one time we had just gotten like single message voice output, and these two men, and they were young 20s, and I had known them since they were like 11 and 12 years old. And they had one had moved to a different building from the other, but they came together at Symbol Social Club. And they saw each other, and they hit the buttons on those communication devices to talk, because they actually had voice output. Well, I stood there and cried because it was so wonderful to see them use their devices to communicate with each other, not just us. And then there were times, this is another Symbol Social Club thing, I had taken, they had a thing called a remote control Viewmaster. The old Viewmasters we all grew up looking with. This projected up on the wall like a slide projector. And you had a remote control. Well, I took the story of Nemo and I wrote the story to go with each slide. I recorded the story on a sequencer voice output device, and I had one of my individuals read the story as the other person, who was very, very physically handicapped, changed the slides. Well, one of them just cracked up laughing at the line where fish are our friends when the shark's trying not to eat the fish. So I knew they got the story totally.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part is the job I got them later reading stories to people in the infirmary.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the rewards you have with the individuals, the rewards you see with your staff, the rewards you get with the families coming in and seeing that these people are communicating and having a better quality of life because of the technology. That's just a few of the highlights. It was a great 30 years to be there.